Content-aware fill gives us the ability to quickly remove distracting elements or objects from our photographs. And because this is one of those tools that you're going to use a lot, I want to show you how we can use this two different ways. Starting off with this photograph here, we'll look at how we can use content-aware fill on the background layer. And then second, we'll jump to another image and look at how we can use the technique when we're working on a duplicate layer. All right, well, this was a photograph that I captured of a helicopter pilot. And let's say for some reason we want to remove the pilot from the frame. How can we do that? Well, here, one of the first things we'll want to do is make a selection. One way to make a selection is with our quick select tool. Let's choose that in the tools panel. And then all that we do is just click and drag over the subject or object that we want to remove. In this case, this pilot here. So I'll just click and drag over this. And you don't need to be super careful about this. You just want a good rough selection of the subject. And you'll see why in just a second. So go ahead and make a selection of the subject there. Now, one of the problems with our selection is that we are just selecting exactly the subject here. If I go to select and mask, you'll see what I mean. So here inside of select and mask, can you see how it's really defined? So what we need to do is rather than have this defined edge, we need to expand or extend the edge. Otherwise, we'll see this weird ghosting and kind of an outline of the object that we're trying to remove. So after you've made your selection, the second step is to go to the Select pull-down menu. Then here, go to Modify and choose Expand. Now, before I do that, let me show you what this looks like if we forget this step, because this may happen to you. It happens to me sometimes. And I just want to show you what would happen so you know how to identify the problem, then fix it. Okay, well, let's say we make our selection. We get excited. We're ready to remove the object. How do we do that? Well, you press Delete on a Mac or Backspace on Windows. When you're on a background layer and you press Delete or Backspace, it opens up our fill dialog. Here, we're going to use Content Aware, and then we'll click OK. Now, a lot of times, initially, we'll think, great, it got rid of the object. This looks so good. And then we go to select and we choose deselect, and all of a sudden, oh no. If we look really close here, I'm hoping you can see this. There's a little outline, almost like a ghost edge of where that object, or in this case, the person used to be. So that won't work. That just doesn't cut it, right? So I'm going to undo this by pressing Command-Option-Z a couple times. Rather than having a selection which is right on the edge like we have here, what we're going to do is go to the Select pull-down menu, choose Modify, and then click on Expand. Now, this Expand dialog is really helpful for this type of technique because what you can do is type in something here like 10 or 15 or 20 pixels. Click OK, and you'll see that it will extend the selection out. So essentially, it just made a larger selection from what we had. That is exactly what we need. Now, when we press Delete on a Mac or Backspace on Windows, and use Content-Aware Fill by clicking OK, what we'll see is that all of a sudden it looks really good. Here I'll go to the Select pull-down menu and choose Deselect. There isn't any of that ghosting. We have now removed this pilot from this frame and just have a picture of the helicopter by itself. So as you can see, this can really help out. Now, one of the downsides, though, is that we can't ever bring the pilot back, or if we've made a mistake, we can't really undo it. So if you want to use Content-Aware Fill with even more flexibility, you'll want to work on a duplicate layer. Let me show you how we can do that with another image. Here, I'll go ahead and open up that image and zoom into the file. For this photograph, I was really interested in capturing this wonderful moment between Renee and her daughter, Amelia. The problem is there are a couple people on the beach in the background. I want to remove those people over there. To do that, this time, we'll copy the background layer. Click and drag that to the new layer icon. Then double-click the layer name, and let's call this one Retouching. All right, next step, we can make a selection of the objects that we want to remove, in this case, these two people. Now, their edges aren't very defined, so rather than quick select, I'll go straight to the lasso tool. And with the lasso tool, I'm going to make a rough selection, and I'm going to add a little bit of a space around the subject or object that I want to remove, because we learned how that can help in the last movie. So go ahead and make the selection. We'll go to our Edit pull-down menu, where we'll find the menu item for the Fill dialog. Let's click on Fill. This will open up the same exact dialog as we've seen before, but this time it's just going to allow us to use this on a separate or duplicate layer. We're going to use Content Aware, and we'll click OK. Now, sometimes what will happen is you can see here, it wasn't perfect. That's okay. I'm going to keep going, and you'll see why in a second. I'll go ahead and make a selection of the other object that I want to remove. I'll go back to the Edit pull-down menu and go to Fill. And here I'm going to take note of the shortcut, Shift F5. The reason why you want to take note of that is because you're going to need to use this fill dialog multiple times. Take a look at how this works. We can, of course, just click here and then click OK. But we have these other little issues, like this part of the beach. I need to clean that up. So rather than going back to the Edit menu, now I'll press Shift F5 and then press Return on a Mac, Enter on Windows. I'll select another area I want to clean up, and I'll press Shift F5 and then press Enter or Return to apply that. I want to clean up the edge of the beach right here. Again, you can see how I'm just making a selection, pressing Shift F5, and it isn't always working perfectly. If it doesn't, you can retouch again on top of that area. Here, I'll press Shift F5, and I'll work on this area over here. What I'm looking to do is to sort of change this edge of the beach over there. So making my selection, pressing Shift F5. You can see how I'm slowly getting a little bit better over here, but it's taken me multiple passes to get it to be good. Now I actually like it. I like how the edge of the beach is really clean like that, and we could clean up other areas as well. And the great thing about all of this is it's on a separate layer. So we can turn the visibility of this layer on and off. If we've made a glaring mistake, we can modify or change it. Or if we've ever decided, you know, we kind of want to bring back something that was in the background, we'll just turn off the visibility of the layer. So most importantly, you now know two different techniques for working with content-aware fill. You may be wondering, okay, Chris, well, why would you ever want to just work on the background layer? Well, sometimes if you're really in a hurry and you know that it's going to work really well the first time, what I'll do is just make a quick selection, hit delete or backspace, and boom, get rid of the object. Yet in most of my images, I find it works a little bit better to copy the layer like we did here, and then to do the work on a duplicate or separate layer.